The next infrastructure program being proposed is the Stop Log Flood Mitigation Project in the Jefferson Chalmers neighborhood. There's about 2,777 parcels in the floodplain right now in Jefferson Chalmers. About 366 of those are on the river or canals, and it impacts about 5,500 people. So the city is proposing that we would install permanent fixtures for temporary stop logs to keep floodwater and Detroit River water out of the sewer system and adjacent properties. This is different than the 2022 Army Corps Floodplain Management Study Report, which recommended 2 permanent canal closures and 1 stop log. Right here, we are proposing 3 stop logs and no permanent canal closures with the DR funds. So the hope is this permanent, the proposed project will provide a permanent fixture to aid in the removal of the floodplain designation in Jefferson, Chalmers, and surrounding neighborhoods. And you can see here where those 3 stop logs are being proposed to be installed. Next slide, please. So here you'll see a close-up of expected work elements to resolve both the overland flooding and floodplain designation issues. Note that the concept of the temporary closure of canals for flood control purposes is again recognized by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in their July 2022 flood risk, and you can find a link to that documentation in our action plan. It is fully acknowledged by all of the parties that possible discharge from the Fox Creek combined sewer by Gliwa into the Fox Creek open channel while stop logs are in place. I just want to repeat that. It is fully acknowledged by all parties that possible discharge of the Fox Creek combined sewer by Gliwa into the Fox Creek open channel while stop logs are in place and is a subject that must be addressed with this proposed project. Additionally, possible stagnation of the canals while the stop logs are in place will be addressed with this project. Next slide, please. Our final project being proposed is the traffic signal connectivity and backup program. So in 2024, we had about 2,400 reported signal malfunctions and 239 power outages. So to mitigate this future negative impact during storms, DPW is proposing to, 1, install generator connector switches to all of the 819 city jurisdiction traffic signals, and we'll talk about where the DR funds will be used for those. Install UPS battery backup at 40 plus high traffic volume intersections in the city, and we'll provide that list to you all as well. And connect 230 currently unconnected traffic signals to the traffic management center. You can see here a picture of the transfer switch and portable generator at the top for your reference, and then the UPS cabinet below. Next slide, please. So again, there are 819 signals and 589 of those are currently connected to the traffic management center. So what we would do is use the disaster recovery funds to upgrade and connect the remaining 230 signals to the network. This would allow the traffic management center to see and manage signal operations in real time, which is super important during storms. So that we can prevent any safety issues related to power outages. The ability to receive that real-time malfunction, again, and outage alerts would come from this project, and then quicker responses to malfunctions and outages from the traffic management system. Currently, TMC is currently relying on being told a light is out. So as a resident, you're making a call and you're saying that this light is out. And this would actually allow the TMC to see it in real time. Next slide, please. And then for the UPS battery backup systems, this is where they're being planned to be installed. You can see the little dots here and then a list of the intersections for that proposed activity. Next slide, please. So here we provided a breakout by category and then by project for your reference. You'll see the 75 million. We talked about the affordable housing, public housing, and homeownership opportunities for down payment assistance. And then the infrastructure, the largest being the sewer alley repair program, which is about, I think, 60% of our funding. And then public facility rehab for homeless shelters, stormwater improvement projects, and traffic signal connectivity and backup, and Jefferson Chalmers stop log flood mitigation project. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps now that you've received the proposed activities? So one, we'll collect verbal feedback today at the end of this hearing. There will also be a public hearing next Monday at 5 o'clock for anybody who has missed this or wanted to attend again after reading the action plan. We will take public comments until Friday, March 28th at 5 p.m. Those can be provided again publicly during these public hearings. They can be provided by email. And in our action plan, if you need accommodations to provide verbal feedback via phone, that can be found in the action plan as well. Once that's done, as LaShawn mentioned earlier, we will submit this action plan to HUD for approval. And once we get approval from HUD, the Detroit City Council will accept and appropriate the funding. Next slide, please.
I think that's it, Nicole.
Oh, okay. So I think before we take public comment, Josh, can we have anybody from any of our partners, if there's anything else you'd like to provide clarity on, I'd like to provide the opportunity for you to come on camera and off mute to provide that at this time.
Sam, did you have something to say?
Not yet. Nicole did such a great job. I'll wait for questions.
Okay.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Nicole, so much for your presentation. We definitely appreciate it. Very thorough. I just wanted to kind of give a quick overview. So it sounds like we are pumping money into our down payment assistance program. Recently, we turned probably 400 renters into homeowners. And so we're continuing that work. We are also putting money into our infrastructure and our alleys and our sewer lines in the alleys so we can affect more households. And we're also trying to get 2 neighborhoods over the hump where the city of Detroit has already made investment into Jefferson, Chalmers, and the Brightmoor area. And so we're also backing up our traffic lights as well. So if the power goes out, like many years ago, we've all experienced that. No one will be getting into accidents. We'll be able to still continue on safely. And so right now, I want to encourage you all, if you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. I'm going to give you a couple of rules of engagement. If you have a question, you can ask your question, and then I'm going to allow you to give a follow-up question if need be, because you might need some clarity on something. But for the benefit of brevity and to respect everyone's time, I want to limit you all to 2 questions per person. If you don't have 2 questions, we'll gladly take your comment or your question. So I'm going to start off with Mr. Denzel Early. Mr. Early, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment. All right, looks like Mr. Early might have lowered his hand. Okay, we're going to go to Ash H. John. Go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment. If you're speaking at this moment, we can't hear you. Ash H. John, you look like you are unmuted. You can go ahead and give us your question or your comment. All right, we're going to move on. Mr. James Jackson Jr., you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Give us your question or your comment.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
My name is James Jackson. I'm with Jeff Chalmers Citizen District Council. Some 12 or 13 years ago, I was part of the crew that built the new pumping plant at Connor and Frood. At that time, the Army Corps of Engineers came in and took us to school on the geographics of this area. This area was built over swamp. From Essex to the river was swamp. Okay. What we have underground is we have 3 or 4 creeks that run underground. They're all connected to the Connor Creek and the Fox Creek ecosystem. Okay. If you block up some of the big creeks on top, you're going to cause the smaller creeks down below that you can't see to swell up and have more water in them. Right now, we have folks out here that have water running up under their homes. It's been that way for years. Many of them can hear and see the water, okay? If you block up those bigger creeks up on top, you're going to swell up those smaller creeks, And in turn, you're probably going to ruin quite a few people's foundations around their homes. Okay? Now, you can check with the Army Corps of Engineers. They took us to school on this stuff. That's been 12 or 13 years ago, and I don't believe any of that stuff has changed. Okay?
So, Mr. Jackson, I'm going to pivot to Mr. Ken Kusel, who I believe is the subject matter expert on this, and he could comment on your comments, okay? Go ahead, Ken.
Yep. Yeah, we do have the Army Corps study that was done in 2005, as well as their latest FPMS reports. And while I don't recall any mention of underground creeks, as part of our preliminary engineering for this proposed project, we'll be doing extensive survey and historical reviews on the watersheds.
Thank you, Ken, so much. Miss LaTanya Pitts, how are you? Go ahead, unmute yourself. Give us your question or your comment.
Hi, how is everybody doing this evening? My question is two parts. I know these are federal funds. I'm currently a federal employee, so with all the high things that are going on right now, budget talks for this is going on this week for them to decide on the budget. Is this money already allocated, or does it have to be voted on with the current administration? And the second one is, when it comes down to the alleyways, who are going to benefit first? Which departments or different people? Because I'm in the Petoskey Otsego Association, and I'm off of Grand River in the Boulevard area. So that's what I want to know. How is this going to affect, and how is it going to be prioritized? Who gets the first service for it? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pitts. Nicole, can't hear you.
You can't hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You're good.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ms. Pitts, for that comment. So to answer your question, the funding that was appropriated to us was appropriated in December of 2024 by Congress. So the money's already been appropriated. However, we are trying to move as quickly as possible to get the action plan in to HUD so that we can get an actual signed grant agreement so we can move forward with the funding. So hope that answers your first question. I know that for your second question, you had asked about the sewer alley repair program. Right now, and Sam, please let me know if I misspeak, but right now DWSD's plan is to work with each city council district to determine which areas they'll begin serving first for that program. So Sam, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
Thank you, Nicole. There are income requirements or limitations as to which neighborhoods we go to. We have over 30,000 data points showing where these failed lateral connections are. We know that there's a lot more. We will be able to run a camera through a sewer. If we don't have that data point, while we're there, we'll be able to pick it up. So we have the outline of a plan, but we did commit to council that we would work with each council member prior to executing the final plan.
Thanks so much, Sam. And so I just want to encourage everyone to be civically engaged and definitely talk to your individual council members and let them know what your issues are in your neighborhood. But again, thank you, Ms. Pitts. Dolores Shepard, we're going to ask you to unmute yourself. Give us your question or your comment, please.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my question. I'm on the corner of Nottingham and Linville, and I am on my 13th flood, even as we speak right now. From it started happening in 2021, and no matter what's going on, I'm still getting. Every time it rains now, every time it clouds up, my basement with all the poop on the east side of Detroit comes into my basement. Who can help me?
Well, Ms. Shepard, it sounds like you're in the right place. So what I want to encourage you to do, we want to take your information down. If you would be so kind to put that in the chat. You do have a district manager. I believe it sounds like you're on District 4. I think you mentioned Nottingham. And
Yes.
so we're going to take your information and connect you to the proper people. You have the water department on here now. And then I also want to encourage you to definitely patronize a private plumber so we can work together with that person and see what the issue is so we can get you a permanent resolution. Sam, do you have anything to add?
Yes, we have an existing program for those that are income qualified under CDBG-DR from the 21 storm. It's called the Private Sewer Repair Program. I would highly encourage anyone who's having sewer issues to go to HRD's website where more information can be found about the program that we have going right now.
Thank you so much, Sam. Appreciate that. Candace Rucker, you can go ahead and mute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the presentation. I see that you said you were allocating $75 million to affordable housing, in which you've already identified some of those funds to go to DHC public housing. So how much of that funding is going to that housing projects that you've already identified, and what's going to be left over?
Yes, thank you for your question. Actually, Josh, if we could go back a slide or two, I think it's the previous slide. You can see here the breakdown of the housing. So the public housing is estimated to be at 31 million. And then the remaining budget is 34 million for affordable housing and 10 million for down payment assistance.
Candace, was that it? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so with the $31,000 going towards the public housing, like what is that doing? Is that for improvements to the house? Is that for vouchers? What is that money actually going to do? How is it you guys going to utilize it?
That's a great question. And Tyler, please let me know if I misspeak. But the goal here is to to ensure that all of the existing public housing units that are owned by the Detroit Housing Commission are rehabilitated and available for rent. Tyler, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think that sums it up. The money will be allocated towards the projects that we've identified to be able to address, deferred maintenance and capital repairs. And so really just being able to bring additional units online in those sites.
Thank you, guys. Moving right along, Miss Vanessa Riley, you can go ahead and mute yourself. Vanessa Riley Bates, give us your question or your comment.
Actually, Terry Swafford, her husband. I've got a couple questions here. Number one, with the sewer repairs, are you splitting the pipes into a two-pipe system? Because that's the issue. Our sewers and our stormwater drains are combined outside of our homes. So then if we've got a large downpour and the city can't handle it with the pumping stations failing, we get sewage mixed in with that and it gets into our basements. That's the cause of our flooding. The catch basin of the street can't keep up with this and they flood the streets with the sewage. It's not coming from the perimeter of the canals. The canals have a seawall issue, which is separate. And if this money isn't going to repairing the seawalls, you're missing the point. The next question is about the stop logs. What's the point of that if it's temporary? What are you trying to accomplish with that? Are you repairing the seawalls? Because at that number, you could repair 366 houses, seawalls, for $11 million. So that's the math. You've got $20 million allocated for that. The parks never flood. Their seawalls are tall enough. They're not tall enough on the canals. You guys are missing the point again. You brought this up several years ago, and it's wrong again.
All right. So, Ken, are you available to answer that?
Yeah, so the stop logs would only be installed during times of high Great Lakes levels where the water is overtopping the canals and getting into the local and regional sewerage systems. That's the only time they would be installed. So it might be a few months out of a year, every 10 years or so has been the rough cyclical nature of that. But that is the intent, is just for those, as well as to, along with the other improvements that we had mentioned, get the city out of floodplain designation.
Thank you so much. Ms. Anita Smith, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Good afternoon. I'd like to know, with the stormwater improvement and sewer alley repair proposals, are those in addition to GLEWA? Or are these outside of GLEWA?
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Sam?
Yes, the sewer alley repair is definitely a DWSD HRD project, so that is completely separate from the Great Lakes Water Authority. The Brightmoor Stormwater Project is also outside of the Great Lakes Water Authority. However, we may be able to get additional assistance from GLEWA because we are reducing the amount of stormwater into the system, helping to reduce CSOs and providing additional capacity for larger storms within the system. So they're both separate for the most part.
Thanks, Sam. Denzel Early, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Olito Chamawengapa. I have two questions, but the first thing I want to do is recommend American Water Resources Program to the person who was having problems with the flooding in the basement. You can get them for like $7 a month, and they'll come out with a service fee at a negotiable price, and they'll work on that sewage line. The first question that I have is what are the long-term recovery plans for those on the city's repair program where unmet needs exceed like $25K at a low interest option for those who have homes that only appraise at $90K? My second question is how can residents continue to use like gold investments, to better the liquidity of the Detroit's economy? And that's all I want to say. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Anyone able to answer his questions?
Repeat the first question.
Let me try to find him again.
I don't know okay, thank you.
Basically, I want to know, like, for those who are on the home repair program through the city of Detroit, I noticed, like, because I'm in that program right now, and, the things that I need done on my house, they exceed $25K. So, like, even when the contractors get done, it's some things that are still going to be lingering around that's not going to be fixed. So I want to know, like, what is the precaution that I should take in order to get those projects done to prevent disasters?
Are you a participant for the 0% interest home loan? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So if you are still, so this funding specifically is only for, it can only address needs tied to the specific disaster for which it was approved for. So we can't go in and do this funding would not be the funding to address your existing conditions for your house unless, of course, the flood caused that condition. But if you, and I don't know, Julie, if you had any further thoughts on this, but for 0%, I don't know if have some other resources we could refer them to.
I'd ask I believe it was Mr. Early, if you could put your information in the chat, and we can follow up with you to identify if there's other resources that can assist you. And we can also have one of our inspectors talk through with you the kind of what a prioritization might be like for the repairs needed in your house.
Thanks, Julie. Miss Allison Hears, I believe that's how you pronounce your name. Please forgive me. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Hi, I just want to have an understanding of like perspective, right? So I'm a Jefferson Chalmers resident, and obviously we're all very, worried and would very much prefer for our canals to not be, for the nature in which we enjoy them to not be altered. And so I see, two things going on, right? There's obviously all of the talk about, the need to separate stormwater from wastewater. I know Grosse Pointte's doing a lot of that work. And as a resident, my experience of flooding has been more from sewer backups than anything over land, right? And so are we looking at, is like the funding around the stop logs and like the desire to do that project, is it more aimed at trying to, is seen as the simplest way to get this zone of the city out of the flood map and therefore make available affordable housing funds via federal grants? And is that somewhat separate from the overall greater, concern of overland flooding? Because to, hearken to a previous resident's comment about the fact that like, working with seawalls and spending money on seawalls and giving people assistance related to seawalls could potentially also take us out of the floodplain. And then I just want to reiterate that I think as Jefferson Chalmers residents, our, main concern is that although the stop logs are deemed as temporary and only during like levels of, high levels, et cetera, I haven't seen any details around like how, when it would be decided those would be put in, what authority we'd be putting them in and taking them out. What power do we have as a community if they end up being stuck in for a lot longer than, what is actually necessary via the water level? And I think if there was clarification on that, there might be more receptivity in people directly near the canals.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of detail that still has to be worked out regarding the operation of the whole system. This was we're still at concept level regarding a lot of the details. Now, I will say that this program is probably one of the most expedient to get relief from the floodplain designation, since the stop logs would be owned, operated, and maintained by the city, where we wouldn't have to worry about private folks keeping up their seawalls, and we could present an argument to FEMA that this could get us out of the floodplain, as it would be owned from the public agency, and they would have just us to deal with, not a whole bunch of individual landowners, and would therefore probably think de-designate the floodplain. Regarding, like I said, a lot of those other details, it's still to be determined. We're still at concept level, and a lot of this will come out through the preliminary engineering process.
Thanks, Ken. iPhone, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Hi, my name is Lauren Chapman. Understanding that the concept is, that the project is still at the concept level, two questions. Is it likely that the sewer is going to be separated so it no longer will be a combined sewer and stormwater system? And then also, is green infrastructure like the pavers that were installed in the Grandmont Rosedale area, is that also a potential to be part of this project to reduce some of that impermeable pavement and reduce some of the stormwater runoff?
I'll jump in here, and I'll probably ask Sam to help out with that also. So the green infrastructure will not help at all when it comes to the times of high Great Lakes levels when the canals are overtopping and getting into the sewer system. It does help when it, to absorb precipitation level runoff. And as far as sewer separation in Jefferson Chalmers, I don't believe that any is currently planned on at this moment.
Thank you, Ken. Actually, and it's difficult to separate the stormwater from sewer in Jefferson Chalmers because of the elevations. It would require a new pump station to be constructed in that area. That being said, we are looking at some GSI options for Jefferson Chalmers. On some vacant properties, we may be able to put some rain gardens, some detention basins to help with the smaller storms, but we're not able to look at full separation at this time or as part of this project.
Thanks, Sam and Ken. So we got about 26 minutes and about 15 hands and people in the chat. So I really want to move a little bit quicker. So Mr. Curtis Burns, if you would be so kind to unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Yes, good evening. Just a couple of questions. Someone was talking about the unmet needs regarding the recent floods. Could those unmet needs could be used for the seawalls in the Chalmers area? And number two, regarding the Camarine and Bayview Yacht Club, I understand that you're talking about putting a flood wall there. Is that something that does the city owns those two marinas now, or is that privately owned? And if so, why are we using those monies to do something private if we're not doing anything private in Chalmers regarding seawalls or flood walls?
Yeah, so I'll start with the Camarine Bayview Yacht Club entrance. The flood wall is just kind of a placeholder for to be determined as to what exactly could be constructed there. As a little bit of background, Great Lakes Water Authority, during the last time we had high Great Lakes levels, noticed seepage coming through and under the Connor Creek berm, and installed a steel sheet pile cutoff wall that went across their frontage. And frankly, what we're probably considering is an extension of that wall so you get to the entrance of Camarine and Yacht Club, and then figure out from there what to do. So we have that there as a placeholder. We don't know if we're going to have to get an easement from them, or whatever the solution is yet to be determined. But frankly, we just don't know at this point. I don't recall what the first part of your question was now. Sorry.
Mr. Burns, I think I just found
Yes.
it. What was your second question?
Yes, that first question was regarding these $25,000, I guess, low interest loans or grants. Could something like that be used in the Chalmers areas to help residents with their unmet needs regarding the recent floods, especially the ones that have no seawall or seawalls that are really in disrepair?
So, Mr. Burns, those monies are strictly for new homeowners for down payment assistance to purchase new homes. So if someone wanted to purchase a home in Chalmers, they will be able to in the city of Detroit. But those particular funds are only being used to purchase homes for those homeowners, future homeowners. Ash H. John, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment. You are unmuted, but unfortunately I cannot hear you. All right, we're going to quickly move on. Ms. Rhonda Adams, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Yes, hi. I wanted to find out with the CDBG DR funding, in essence to homeowner having already spent the money that I guess was supposed to come down the line for the sewer repair. Is there a way for them to recoup that funding through that CDBGR DR? They didn't have flood insurance, but they did pay out of pocket. And thought there was a stipulation in there for that. And if so, how do they get the funding back in essence? And then that's one question. The second question is with the sewer department. The insurance, if a person has insurance, homeowners insurance, is a way also to get that repaired if you're not covered up under the income threshold, and get those funds recouped through the CDBGR too.
Okay. So both questions you had were about recouping funds that were already spent. Is that correct, Ms. Adams?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have someone from water that can talk about that, or Nicole?
So unfortunately, we cannot reimburse individuals for expenses paid out as a result of the disaster. That is an ineligible expense for CDBG DR funding.
Thank you. Ms. Yolanda Peoples, you can go ahead and give us your question or your comment.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I want a question about treatment facility being built on through. We already have an overflow of waste coming into our community from Grosse Points. We have many incidents of sewer backups, not floods, because the sewage backup is a infrastructure problem with the city and GLWA. They took over after the fake bankruptcy. So they were put in place to do this thing to make our property values go down. I want to know.
Hello?
Hello?
Go ahead. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. I want to know what the real problem is you're not addressing, because we don't need to be the floodplain. We didn't have a flood. So Grosse Pointe is not in floodplain anymore. They didn't go through this vigorous police show that you given us. You are doing a dog and pony show without having any credibility of what you're doing. You already started draining our creeks already. Ashton and Jefferson, that's just the start of it. It was a.
I'm sorry, Ms. Peoples. You can go ahead. Keep going. Ms. Peoples, you can unmute yourself.
I need more time than the average person because I have a peace impediment. According to the ADA, you need to allow me to get more time to speak and get my words out, okay?
Absolutely, Ms. Peoples. I think you accidentally muted yourself, but go ahead. You can keep going.
Okay. So I'm saying that y'all are giving us a dog and pony show with what's going on because we can easily get out of the floodplain just like Grosse Pointe did already. We don't have to do this Greek shutdown and make our area more susceptible to disease and mosquito overflow. And we need running water through the creeks that runs through our neighborhood. We need not a big facility to treat our water. We need the facility to be updated that already exists. We need the Macomb County to have their own treatment center to treat their own wastewater. All these numbers you have on this budget don't count for nothing. You are not doing anything to help us. Our property value have plummeted since the 2016. They were starting to go up. Now they are plummeting again. So I want to know what the real issue is because it sounds like a GLWA problem to me, not not neighborhood problem. You trying to take over our neighborhood cheaply and give our property value away to other people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Peoples. We appreciate your comments. I will say this, City of Detroit property values have gone up pretty rapidly, even over cities like Miami. That has been proven even by the study for the University of Michigan. And I will also say that the down payment assistance and the things that have been allocated, this money has been allocated for, is very important. We just recently turned 400 renters into homeowners in the last year and a half through this down payment assistance. So I hear you, Ms. Peoples. We can definitely talk offline, get your information, and have some more dialogue with you. But I just want us to be sure that we know that these monies are in the best interest of our residents, and we're trying to get us the biggest bang for our buck for the allocation. Vinny DeTuit, I hope I'm not butchering your name. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
All right, can you hear me okay? This is actually his wife, Erica.
Okay.
Okay, great. I have two questions. So the first one, I'm probably reiterating what some comments other people on the call have asked, but would increasing the residents' seawalls on the canal take us out of the flood zone?
Ken, are you there?
Yep. The short answer is no. According to FEMA, they would want a publicly owned entity to control the seawalls, much like the Alter Road seawall that is the city's responsibility to own and maintain.
And Ms. Erica, what's your second question?
My second question is, where can we get more information on what the log structures are going to be, functionality, maintenance, and thresholds? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the tiger dams were just left in residents' yards for years. So the concern for me living on the canal is that those log structures are going to be kept closed permanently if it's anything like what we saw with the tiger dams.
So short answer is, if you Googled stop logs, you can see all types of different installations. Some of them are applicable to this situation, others aren't. If you can imagine garage door panels, roughly the size of a garage door panel, individually get lifted and slid into place into a holding mechanism, and those stack up to eventually make the temporary dam. And when those segments are no longer needed due to the lowering of the water levels, those would just be retrieved and stored until the next time they're used. The temporary tiger dams, those did get left out a while, and I don't have a good answer for that.
Thank you, Ken. William M. Davis, go ahead, give us your question or your comment. We're going to try to get the next 10 or 11 questions in the next 13 minutes.
Okay, my comment is this. I'm on the west side. I'm the vice president of Barton Farm Neighborhood Association. I live in the aviation subdivision, and our home prices have gone up, but I think our home prices would have went up even more if we didn't have flooding in our basements and flooding in our streets. Like I worked for the water department, for 34 years. Our streets didn't used to flood like they do now. Like I say, it seems like some things are worse. Also, it should be more funds available to help homeowners that may be slightly above, what y'all call the income guidelines, especially looking at city of Detroit retirees like myself. I haven't had an increase in my pension. In fact, my pension was cut 11 years ago, and I haven't had no increase. So there's a lot of people in my group. I'm also president of a retiree group too for the city. So I think more needs to be done to help, residents that's above that. More needs to be done to help city of Detroit retirees, especially city of Detroit retirees that work for the water department. Those are my comments and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Sam, did you want to speak toward that?
Yeah, real briefly. Hi, Mr. Davis. Good seeing you again. DWSD did get a $3.2 million grant to do backwater valves and private sewer repair in both aviation and Warrendale neighborhoods. So we are working with FEMA on that right now. The Great Lakes Water Authority is doing a 7-year, $10 million study to look at areas, and we have made it really clear to them that we need to know what's happening on your side of town, especially with aviation and some of the surrounding neighborhoods. Because in the 21 storm, those sewers were completely full. So they're going to look at that and the discharge impact that Rouge River elevations may have. That's it.
Thanks, Sam. Betty A. Varner, go ahead, give us your question or your comment.
Good evening to all within the sound of my voice. I have a question, and if there's no one on this the panel or whatever to answer the question or for my comment, then I'm going to make a request to the Doncast staff. But first of all, I want to say in regards to the AWR program, those the cost has been increased, and it's going to become effective April 1st because I received my notification, but it's still a good I guess a good thing to have. The cost is still lower than if you had go through some other company. But I had attended a meeting where Mr. Gary Brown was doing a presentation, and a young lady spoke about an experience she had with AWR in regards to, she used the program in regards to a sewer or whatever being backed up, and they did digging in her yard or whatever, and the problem was resolved. But she said you have to read or whatever the small print because they told her it was not in the coverage to fill the hole. And that created a problem for her because when she started getting estimates to get the hole refilled, it was just ridiculous, the cost. And so Mr. Brown at that time stated that he wasn't aware of that problem and he was going to get back with her or whoever to find out if that was true or what the issue was. So my question is there anybody on the panel knows, or if the Doncast can get that information for us and on one of these Doncast meetings, let us know what the deal is. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, do you have any thoughts on that?
Real briefly, I am aware that the AWR contract does not include hard surface restoration. So if they have to remove asphalt or concrete of a sidewalk or a driveway, that they do not replace that. They should be backfilling their holes so that there's not a safety hazard. But we'd be happy to get more information and respond more in detail.
Thanks, Sam. Norel Hemphill, you can go ahead and give us your question or your comment.
Yes, good evening. I have two questions. Can you provide more guidance and detail around, I heard a couple people ask, like, what was GLEWA's responsibility and what's DWSD's responsibility as far as our water lines and infrastructure. So can you provide a little bit more guidance around that? Like, where is that, those hard lines between Detroit Water and Sewage Department and GLEWA? Responsibility? That's my first question.
Generally, the Great Lakes Water Authority operates, maintains, and improves the larger diameter sewer mains and water transmission mains. They also operate, maintain, and improve the CSO satellite treatment facilities, the water treatment plants, and the CSO treatment facilities like the Connor Creek one that was mentioned earlier. DWSD operates, maintains, and owns the smaller distribution system, some water transmission mains, but generally all of the assets that are in the neighborhoods bringing the water to the houses.
Okay. And then my second question was about the American Water Resources. I know that DWSD, Mr. Brown said at a meeting that DWSD gets a portion of that contract, the dollars from that contract. What is that money used for, and how much has DWSD gotten from that contract so far?
I think that we got $20,000 last year. Mr. Peckinpah can correct me if I'm wrong. I would respectfully suggest that we use our remaining time to talk about CDBG-DR because there's a lot of questions on that, but we'd be happy to get you more information on AWR.
Thanks, Sam. I'm going to take a total of about 5 more questions. Some of you have already raised your hand, so I will not be calling on you again. So, Ms. Sharon Meadows, you can go ahead, give us your question or your comment.
Yes. I just wanted to ask, the proposal that you've got here looks a whole lot like the one that was put forward before. The proposal for the stop logs and closing up the canals looks a whole lot like what we saw before. And I was wondering, is this essentially what it was before, where when you talked about the stop log, the plans for the stop logs, like at the Lakewood Canal?
Yes, it is. It was thought that rather than have any permanent closures of any canals, having the temporary installations would be more acceptable rather than having any permanent closures.
But Ken, the previous plan, it called for 1 stop log. So
two permanent closures and 1 stop log installation. So this time it's 3 stop logs, which means they're all temporary in nature and no permanent closures.
Thank you. Miss Liz, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Good evening. I was wondering specifically about the sump pump installation part of the CDBG program. I have contacted a few people in the water department and I haven't been able to get a clear answer on whether they're still doing sump pump installations and who to talk to about that.
We are doing sump pumps in a very limited number of applications because we cannot eject sanitary waste onto the street or elsewhere. So there's very limited neighborhoods where sump pumps are applicable, but we are doing backwater valves. We are televising sewer laterals. We are correcting any defects that we find, including connections to the public main as part of the current CDBG-DR program. Nicole put the link in the chat. The alley program that we're talking about here will just be fixing those connections in the alleys.
And one thing I want to the PSRP program recently expanded into about 70 plus neighborhoods. So please note that your neighborhood may be eligible and that you should check out that link to see if you're now part of the additional neighborhoods that that program was extended to. And again, the link is in the chat.
Thanks, Nicole. Ms. Teresa Williams, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Okay, I have a question and I have a comment. Mr. Josh, I'm sorry I wasn't able to get on here immediately. What's your role, sir?
Currently, I'm the District 5 manager, and
Oh, you're the District 5 manager. Okay.
Yes.
All right, Josh. Let me ask you this: who came up with this?
Who came up with the?
Who came up with splitting this money up the way that it's been distributed and what you guys have shown here? Who came up with that?
Okay, Nicole, Julie.
Who's Nicole, Julie?
No, I'm saying I'm asking them to. I'm referencing them so they can give you an answer.
So I'll just start by saying that the CDBG-DR regulations require us to do 2 different things. The first thing is to determine what our unmet needs are as a result.
Miss Julie, let me stop you right there, honey. I asked a question. Who came up with this? You didn't say residents. You didn't say taxpayers in the city of Detroit. So we can stop right there, because if it didn't begin with us, we're gonna scratch this whole thing and start over.
Ms. Williams, Ms. Williams, I want to be very polite to you, but I want to start off by letting Nicole speak. She wanted to give you a full answer. And so, Ms. Williams, I'm asking you to please allow Nicole to finish. She wanted to give you the beginning to the end so that you can have a full, complete answer, Ms. Williams. So I'm going to let Nicole finish her answer, and then Ms. Williams, we'll let you speak. Absolutely. Go ahead, Nicole. Nicole, we can't hear you. I think your speaker is being blocked.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Not sure what that issue is. So there are a couple of things that we have.
Nicole, we can't hear you for some reason.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear? Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, Nicole. There are some people that say they can't hear you. I can't hear you either. I'm getting a lot of comments saying they cannot hear you. I'm not for sure. So
Josh, I can hear her clearly.
Yeah, I can hear her. We can hear her. I have 5 people that say they can't hear her in the chat. So there's an issue. Yep, there's an issue. So Julie, if you could answer it.
Okay, I'll
continue to
try to
answer.
pick up where Nicole was. So the Nicole, I believe where Nicole was going is that we receive these dollars to do kind of certain things, meaning we need to use these dollars for activities related to the disaster event that produced these dollars, for which Congress allocated these dollars. So in this, we're talking about a flooding event caused by a storm. So most of the dollars have to go towards alleviating concerns and long-term recovery associated with a flooding event caused by a large rainstorm. Some dollars have to go to what HUD calls mitigation. So the stop logs, for example, are an example of a mitigation activity.
Hello?
Kim?
Go ahead, Julie.
All right. So that kind of sets the framework around what types of activities the dollars can be used for. They have to go towards the issues that were exacerbated by the storm. So we see infrastructure here related to housing and housing investments as the 2 primary categories. So based on the data that we have, the data we receive, and what the cause of the disaster was, the departments that you see represented identified uses that we believe, based on the data, would have the greatest impact in reducing the issues that were caused by the disaster.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Ms. Williams, we're going to let you give maybe a 10-second comment because I got 3 more questions here. So, Ms. Williams, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your comment, and then we'll move on.
Short and sweet. Detroit residents that are on here, this process should have started with us first. We are more than capable of understanding parameters and then following those parameters and then making suggestions and decisions around those parameters, what is to be done with our money. Contact your city council person, as they are the people and the mayor that we have hired to put in charge of our money. And I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, so much. We appreciate you. I want to take these last 3 questions. Joe Machern, excuse me, I don't mean to butcher your name. Go ahead, unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment. The computer should be asking you to unmute.
Hello, sorry about that.
Yep.
Joe McEachran here, Jefferson Chalmers resident. When are we going to get an explanation of how floodwater will be dealt with during major rain events during years when stop logs are in place. Before you answer the question, I'd just like to make a comment that I've been present for 4 of the last floods. And during every one of those floods, stormwater was entering the canals and exiting through them, not coming in to town. It was going out into the river. I understand that there was some pressure put on the stormwater system from seawall leaks. However, even that year, during those events, water was exiting. So how are you guys going to make it to where you're not turning us into a really gross cesspool, making things worse? Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
So the last time we did have canal overtopping was in 2021, I believe. And that, again, wasn't due to precipitation. It was due to the high Great Lakes basins levels. And if the stop logs were in place during those events when Fox Creek made discharge, again, that's still to be determined. However, we're not intending on changing the flow of the canals at all. During normal years, it'll still flow outward toward the river.
Sam, is there anything you want to add, or are we good? Okay, great. Jay Jurgensen, I believe that is how you pronounce it. You can give us your question or your comment. You got about 30 seconds.
Great. I have to challenge many of the comments made by the various representatives and offer some clarification. The over-the-top canal flooding that occurred in 2021 was a result of the Fox Creek discharge, not because the Detroit River or the Great Lakes were high. The community continues to challenge options 1 and 3 that are offered in the floodplain management study. We found these solutions unacceptable. And when is the administration going to start listening to the community and start proposing projects that we support? The Corps' estimate for the floodplain solutions in 1 and 3 is between $160 and $170 million. So I'm wondering, so my first question is, when are you going to start listening to us and stop proposing unacceptable solutions? My second question is, where are you getting the rest of the $161 to $171 million to complete the options proposed in the Corn study? And can Mr. Cassell provide written documentation that FEMA is requiring a publicly owned solution in order to solve the floodplain management problem? Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Ken.
Sorry. Yep. There, excuse me. There is guidance in FEMA documentation regarding ownership and maintenance responsibilities, so we can get that posted. Regarding the Fox Creek discharge, that has nothing to do with high Great Lakes level and all to do with precipitation events and issues, well, possible issues within the local and regional sewer system. So again, the Fox Creek discharge has nothing to do with high Great Lakes level overtopping. Those are 2 very separate things. So we're trying to fix both the canal overtopping problem as well as get us out of the floodplain designation.
Thank you so much. Last 2 questions. Keith Mathis, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Hi, yes, may I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So I was a few minutes late, so I'm a little confused about the disaster recovery funds being used for affordable housing. So I need clarity around like what income bracket are those funds to be distributed under the affordable housing section. And then that's the first question. And also tonight, all the community members have been identifying what they think might be more beneficial in their areas, and which may be more efficient or creative, and also sounds like they believe it might be permanent fixes to their issues, and it might be different than what's a normal go-to for the contractors that the city of Detroit normally work with. They normally leech off our public coffers, at a low attachment rate to how our future would be. So my question is, will the community be able to participate, in the types of recovery solutions, the replacements and things that fit into the requirements. We know that there are the list of requirements, but there is many of, even new age things, eco-friendly, like all types of different things that could fit into that, because this funds technically came from the Biden when the Biden administration was here. So it was very broad. So I'm asking, when will the community be able to, or will they be able to participate when it comes to the types of things that, that will be replaced?
Thank you so much. Nicole?
So I can answer the affordable housing question. So CDBG DR funding does allow for us to serve households up to 80% of the area median income. However, generally our affordable housing that we see through HRD is usually no more than 50 to 60% AMI, and that is likely due to our own local regulations around affordable housing, as well as LIHTC and other leverage funds for those units. So I hope that answers the question that you had for affordable housing.
Anybody else want to chime in on her questions? Okay, our final question for the night. True, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment. Someone with the username of True, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, give us your question or your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was needing more clarity on that private sewer alley repair program. I don't understand. Are they saying that the sewer lines only run from like the rear of your house to the alley? And then also, is there sewer lines in the front, like in the street? And Josh, I'm also in your district. So like the caller earlier, every time it rains, my basement gets water in as well. So contacting places like Foundation System of Michigan, places like that, waterproofing companies, they're ridiculously high as a result of that 21 flood. So my basement, for lack of a better word, is buckling. The floor is rising. I've had a company come out, and I thought it was a tree, so I got rid of the tree. They said that there's no roots growing in there. Is it coming from the sewer line is what I want to know. If there's anybody from the Department of Water and Sewage that I could probably get somebody out here to tell me exactly what's going on. I already took advantage of the that 0% interest loan to get my front porch and sidewalk fixed. So, I financially can't afford to get these waterproofing companies, especially when they're telling me water is coming into the basement somehow. And I want to know if that somehow is through these sewer lines. And then also, part two, what is meant by low to moderate income? You got to meet income level on our website. What is meant by low to moderate? I'm retired and I can't financially afford, based on my income, to give a waterproofing company $25,000, $30,000. That's the price of another house to get it waterproof. When I think it's probably the sewer lines, because I don't know if you guys can remember, we were told that the city lines are antiquated. They've been antiquated for years. So how can I get help with this? I know you told the other lady to reach out to her district manager. So I'm going to reach out to you after this. But if anybody could share anything from the Detroit Water and Sewage, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.